check this out. I'm going to read from Of Mice and Men. I mean, pretty much everyone would have heard of that. It's a pretty popular book. So, okay. Don't expect too much. I am not a professional reader. I can read, but I might not sound good as your English teachers or yourselves even. Okay, let's have a go now. A few miles south of Soledad, the Salinas River drops close to the hillside bank and runs deep and green. The water is warm too, for it has slipped, twinkling over the yellow sands in the sunlight before reaching the narrow pool. On one side of the river, the golden foothill slopes curve up to the strong and rocky Gavilan Mountains, but on the valley side the water is lined with trees, willows, fresh and green with every spring, carrying in their lower leaf junctures the debris of the winter's flooding, and sycamores with mottled white recumbent limbs and branches that arch over the pool. On the sandy bank under the trees, the leaves lie deep and so crisp that a lizard makes a great skittering if he runs among them. Rabbits come out of the brush to sit on the sand in the evening, and the damp flats are covered with the night tracks of coons, and with the spread pads of dogs from the ranches, and with the split wedge tracks of deer that come to drink in the dark. There is a path through the willows, and among the sycamores, a path between hard-by boys coming down from the ranches to swim in the deep pool, and beaten hard by tramps who come wearily down from the highway in the evening to jungle up near the water. In front of the low horizontal limb of a giant sycamore, there is an ash pile made by many fires. The limb is worn smooth by men who have sat on it. The evening of a hot day started, the little wind moving among the leaves. The shade climbed up the hills toward the top. On the sandbanks the rabbits sat as quietly as little grey sculptured stones, and then from the direction of the state highway came the sound of footsteps on crisp sycamore leaves. The rabbits hurried noiselessly for cover. A stilted heron laboured up into the air and pounded down river. For a moment the place was lifeless, and then two men emerged from the path and came into the opening by the green pool. They had walked in single file down the path, and even in the open one stayed behind the other. Both were dressed in denim trousers and in denim coats with brass buttons. Both wore black shapeless hats, and both carried tight blanket rolls slung over their shoulders. The first man was small and quick, dark of face with restless eyes and sharp, strong features. Every part of him was defined: small, strong hands, slender arms, and a thin, bony nose. Behind him walked his opposite, a huge man, shapeless of face, with large pale eyes, wide sloping shoulders, and he walked heavily, dragging his feet a little by the way a bear drags its paws. His arms did not swing at his sides, but hung loosely. The first man stopped short in the clearing, and the follower nearly ran over him. He took off his hat and wiped the sweatband with his forefinger and snapped the moisture off. His huge companion dropped his blankets and flung himself down and drank from the surface of the green pool, drank with long gulps, snorting into the water like a horse. The small man stepped nervously beside him. "Lenny," he said sharply. "Lenny, for God's sake, don't drink so much." Lenny continued to snort in the pool. The small man leaned over and shook him by the shoulder. "Lenny, you're going to be sick like you was last night." Lenny dipped his whole head under the hat and all, and then he sat up on the bank, and his hat dripped down on his blue coat and ran down his back. "That's good," he said. "You drink some, George. You take a good big drink." He smiled happily. George unslung his bindle and dropped it gently on the bank. "I enjoy it's good water," he said. "Looks kind of scummy." Lenny dabbled his big paw in the water and wiggled his fingers so the water arose in the little splashes. Rings widened across the pool to the other side and came back again. Lenny watched them go. "Look, George, look what I done." George knelt beside the pool and drank from his hand with quick scoops. "Tastes all right," he admitted. "Don't really seem to be running though." "You never ought to drink water when it ain't running, Lenny," he said hopelessly. "You'd drink out of a gutter if you was thirsty." He threw a scoop of water into his face and rubbed it about with his hand. under his chin and around the back of his neck. Then he replaced his hat, pushed himself back from the river, drew up his knees and embraced them. Lenny, who had been watching, imitated George exactly. He pushed himself back, drew up his knees, embraced them, looked over to George to see whether he had just right. He pulled his hat down a little more over his eyes, the way George's hat was. George stared morosely at the water. The rims of his eyes were red with sun glare. He said angrily, "We could just as well as road clear to the ranch if that bastard bus driver knew what he was talking about. Just a little stretch down the highway," he says. "Just a little stretch. Not damn near 4 miles, that's what it was. Didn't want to stop at the ranch gate, that's what. Too goddamn lazy to pull up. Wonder he isn't too damn good to stop inside that at all." Kicks his hand and says, "Just a little stretch down the road. I bet it was more than 4 miles. Damn hot day." Lenny looked timidly over to George. "George?" "Yeah, what do you want?" "Where are we going, George?" The little man jerked down to the brim of his hat and scowled over at Lenny. "So you forgot that already, did ya? I gotta tell you again, do I? Jesus Christ, you're a crazy bastard." "I forgot," Lenny said softly. "I tried not to forget, honest to God I did, George." Okay, I'll tell you again. I ain't got nothing to do. Might as well spend all my time telling you things, and then you forget them, and I'll tell you again." "Tried and tried," said Lenny, "but it didn't do no good. I remember about the rabbits, George." "The hell with the rabbits, that's all you ever can remember is them rabbits. Okay, now you listen this time, you gotta remember so we don't get in no trouble. You remember sitting in that car on Howard Street watching that blackboard?" Lenny's face broke into a delighted smile. "Why, sure, George, I remember that. But what do we do then? I remember some girls come by, and you say, the hell with what I says. You remember about us going in a Murray and Reddy's and they gave us work cards and bus tickets?" "Oh, sure, George, I remember that now." His hands went quickly into his side coat pockets. He said gently, "George, I ain't got mine. I must have lost it." He looked down at the ground in despair. "You never had none, you crazy bastard. I got both of them here. They gotta let you carry around your own work card." Lenny grinned with relief. I thought I put it in my side pocket." His hand went into the pocket again. George looked sharply at him. "What'd you take out of that pocket?" "Ain't a thing in my pocket," Lenny said cleverly. "I know there ain't. You got it in your hand." "What you got in your hand?" "Hit it." "I ain't got nothing, George. Honest. Come on, give it here." Lenny held his closed hand away from George's direction. "It's only a mouse, George." "A mouse? A live mouse?" "Just a dead mouse, George. I didn't kill it, honest. I found it. Dead." "Give it here," said George. "Oh, leave me have it, George. Give it here." Lenny's closed hand slowly obeyed. George took the mouse and threw it across the pool to the other side among the brush. "What do you want of a dead mouse, anyways? I could pet it with my thumb while we walked along," said Lenny. "Well, you ain't petting no mouse while you're walking with me. You remember where we're going now?" Okay, I'll have to stop now because YouTube videos only last for 10 minutes, so it will get closer and closer to 10 minutes and I'll lose my place and then I'll forget where I am, so I'll stop to the bottom of that page and then at some point I will record another one and I'll post that as well. If I post them on there, part 1, part 2, part 3, then you know exactly